Hello and welcome to Set Your Inner Child Free. In this series, I want to invite you to settle in and take the time to truly nurture your inner child spirit. And we're doing this a couple of different ways during this series. We're healing, we're playing, we're getting in touch with our soul's magic. We're bringing play back into our lives. I want you to make sure that you grab something to drink. I've got my big giant water bottle that I've been drinking throughout this whole series. Your journal. I've got my little journal here. Any art supplies, if you're a bullet journal sort of person, anything funky or stickers or whatever, however you take your notes, be sure you have those close by. And we're going to start by taking 3 grounding deep breaths. So first, I want to invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable to you. Place your feet on the ground or wherever you might be, just climbing into your body, climbing into your toes, climbing into your feet. Take a deep breath in. Allow that air to travel all the way to your feet. And out. Again, allowing the air to travel into your body. And out. And one more deep breath in. Coming into this moment right here, right now. And out. Leaving behind anything that you don't want to take into this experience with you right now. So, welcome everybody. And today I have a very, very special guest for you, Miss Michelle Rusk. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So glad you're here today. So here's a bit about this amazing lady. She is a holistic health coach on a mission to improve women's health. She tackles and takes on issues of mom health, overwhelm by helping women eliminate brain fog and chronic fatigue, chronic inflammation, and hormone disturbances through gut and hormone health. So I'm really glad that you decided to join us here today. And I asked you to come onto the series because I know that you do work with the inner child. So can you tell me a little bit more about the nature of that, of what you do and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey began, it began a few years back on my own health journey when I was trying to get myself well from being sick for a good amount of time. And it went from not being so outward to getting worse over time to the point where it got to the point where I was feeling really just, it was crippling me. It was debilitating me. And I was going from doctor to doctor to doctor and not getting a lot of answers. And they kept telling me, well, all of your tests are coming back fine. You know, everything looks good. I had blood work. I had an MRI even, because a lot of my symptoms even mimicked multiple sclerosis. And, you know, everything was coming back fine, but I knew that there was something wrong with me. And there was a turning point because I said, something has to definitely change because they're not really telling me what's going on, but I know my body, and my body is telling me that there is something going on. So I've always been a very spiritual and a very intuitive person. This experience made it go full circle because immediately I found that I was actually being a little bit of a rebel and going against the conventional medicine model, the allopathic medicine model. And I myself am also a speech pathologist, so I work in that model as well. But at that point in time, I was like, so I'm glad all of my tests are coming back fine, but I know that I'm sick. There's something really wrong with me. So I decided to listen to my intuition. and to really follow through with what my body was telling me. And I dove into research like never before. And I started, researching food allergies and, food triggers that could potentially have been causing what was going on with me. And I learned right off the bat that gluten, a lot of my symptoms seem to align with a gluten intolerance, even celiac disease. My celiac came back negative. But here's the thing about these blood tests too. A lot of the times the blood tests give you false negatives until you're so sick to the point that they're like, oh, it's like the unfortunate diagnosis of cancer when you're stage 4, God forbid, because the blood tests are just not, they're just not accurate enough. Like, you typically have to be very, very sick. So I started removing these foods out of my diet. But then something really strange happened to me, because I've never been I've never been a gardener. I've never been somebody who really, I like to hike. I like to be outside and be active, but I never really was one that I wanted my hands to get in the dirt. And I felt extremely called to start growing my own food seasonally, to start planting and following the rotation of basically the earth cycles and of the seasons. So I eliminated gluten. I also eliminated dairy. And I noticed huge improvements in my health just in a few weeks. And I'm not going to say it was easy, because it was not. Your body, it goes through withdrawal. It definitely goes through withdrawal, and that's just the dopamine with that necessary craving. It's hungry for that fix, but that all goes away once you break that, once you break that connection. And I started gardening, and I started eating very seasonally, and suddenly I started feeling like, it's even hard to put into words, because even when I'm in my garden now, I ground with the earth. And actually, what a lot of women don't realize is we do ground with the earth. And it's really important for us. It's actually also very important for our cycles. And we have just gotten so far. We have become so detached from that concept, that amongst other reasons, like genetically modified organisms, toxins, pesticides, chemicals that we're being exposed to every day. But it goes so much deeper than that, because we have also uprooted that intuitive part of us and have pulled away from that it's making us even more sick. So that's it. It literally, my own illness just took me full circle, and it put me back into a state of really feeling grounded and aligned. And that is what I love to do and help other women with, because we're so busy these days. There's no time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love what you said about how you felt called to garden, and you followed that physical. I can imagine that. I can only imagine. I just didn't say it, but I can imagine that it was a physical kind of longing to be out there. And I know that for me, in working with kids, I'm at my best when I am sitting on the ground with them. and kind of rolling around on the ground, being goofy, on the ground. And yes, you're absolutely right that that grounding force is so powerful, especially for women. That's awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And especially so, I'm also a mom. I've got 4 kids, and they range from ages 13 to 2. So I mean, it's busy. And what I have found as well is, sometimes when I just need a break, I go out there, and they all know now that, oh, okay, mommy's in her space, mommy's in her garden. They also know that they're more than welcome to come out there. And I talk to them. Like right now I have lettuces galore just coming up right now, because now it's that season. It's the season for the romaines, for the red leaf lettuces, and I have an abundance of it. And one of the things that I also love to teach my kids, and love for myself now too, is to just pull a leaf, just pull a leaf right off and eat it without even washing it, which is actually extraordinarily important for us to do. Now, of course, I'm teaching my kids, don't do this outside of the garden.
This is with mommy. I'm going to be teaching you these things.
Right. But it's super important because your gut needs that inner connection. It needs those microbes. And it also, and why it's so important to change with the seasons and to rotate your crops in the seasons is because the microbes in the dirt also change season to season. So
Oh, I knew about the microbes in the dirt, but I didn't realize that they change from season to season.
yes, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to eat seasonally, because between the seed and the dirt composition, it changes. And so you're never so you want to vary the foods that you're eating. You want to vary your diet as much as possible to reap all of the benefits. And your gut needs those microbes to produce the proper hormones, to produce the proper neurotransmitters that our bodies need to make us feel happy, to make us feel like I was depressed. I mean, let's face it, sickness makes you sad.
Oh, absolutely. I know I've got Hashimoto's or had Hashimoto's. Now it's just like full blown hypothyroidism.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, I completely relate. Went into the doctor, they didn't find anything wrong. And then eventually they were like, your thyroid has been destroyed. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Thanks. So yeah, I'm right there with you. And but I think that absolutely that's part of following that inner child and that play and getting really, into that. I feel it's play, allowing yourself to kind of like venture outside and follow follow nature, follow the seasons, and really become more aware of your environment. And that is something that I know it's really sad, but I know that in the education system, in our education system, will pull kids away from nature and we force them to sit in little boxes. And,
yes,
taking the nature out of it, and it's so wrong.
yes.
And so this is a matter of like, bring yourself all the way back to that time when you were exploring, allowing yourself to be outside and, get your hands dirty.
Oh yeah. Well, I used to be the mom. I mean, and I'm very transparent with my first son. I used to be the mom that I did not want him to play in the dirt. I didn't want him to get dirty. Like I was actually fearful of that. And a lot of that came from working in the medical field, and learning about bacteria and learning about the bad, MRSA and VRSA and all these, C. diff, all these nasty drugs. But the fact of the matter is we actually need to be playing in the dirt more. So now with my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old, they came in just not too long ago, covered, like literally covered. Like now, I mean, my son, he digs with his little toys in the backyard. I mean, sometimes, and I do tell him, please don't do that, because he'll take the dirt and dump it on his little sister's head. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Nice.
But,
Just getting healthy.
yeah, I know. So, but it really is that element of play and letting yourself get a little dirty. Like letting yourself get a little dirty. Speaking of a baby, I have one visiting.
It happens. Kids are great. They're going to come in when they need to. It's all good. Hello. Oh my goodness. So
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and even for me as an adult, it is like when I am in my garden, that's the other thing. I used to wear gloves and I don't anymore. Like I don't wear gloves anymore because there are actually studies out there that show that just by even putting your hands in the dirt, you start producing happy hormones, and it calms you down. Like there's this element of it just brings you down and it grounds you. Like grounding is such a strong word because literally that's the right word for it. Like it just grounds you. Mm-hmm. And my 4-year-old, he tends to be I always say he's my out of the box kid.
Yeah.
And he is the very unconventional. Would you like her? She is the very unconventional. He's the very unconventional one that everything that we try to do for him doesn't necessarily work. And he can go from 0 to 100 in a minute. But when he's outside and he is lost in his play and lost in his dirt is what I've really noticed. It's like this element of just, he's in his own world and he's totally relaxed and he's totally calm. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, because that's how I get when I'm in my garden. So it's just, yeah.
It's part of being human. I think it's just so sad that, in our society, we're like, no, you have to follow these rules. And I'm going, it doesn't work.
No. And I think essentially it's making us more sick.
It is. It truly is.
Yeah.
And we've got an education system that is basically, it was made to pump out, farmers, but yet we're not out in farming anymore. And we're wanting kids to be reading when they walk out of the womb. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. The standards have changed so much.
Completely. So I want to talk about, I know you do the Dutch hormone test. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that because it's fascinating. We were talking a little bit about it before this. So tell me more.
Yeah. So the Dutch hormone test is a test that measures a full gamut of hormones. So it looks at everything from progesterone to estrogen to testosterone, cortisol, your DHEA, and then it also even looks at your organic acids, or they're also called your oats. So those are things like B6, B12, which a lot of people, particularly women, and as we age, a lot of times we become deficient in those, and they are super important. Like our B vitamins are our energy vitamins. They heal and they help our mitochondria down on the cellular level. So they're super important. But all it is it's a dried urine test that you do in the comfort of your own home. And you just follow the instructions. You follow what the lab instructions, which is really easy. It's literally like a pregnancy test, which is what we were talking about before. And then what it does is you start, if I remember, it's after dinner, and you start your test then, and you go overnight, and then you in the following morning you finish whenever you every 2 hours, I think it is, you urinate on the strip, and then you set it out, you let it dry. And then why you do that over the period of the hours is because it's actually getting a beautiful reading of your hormones, where they are during those hours of the day. And so you have the afternoon, the evening, and the morning. So you have all those measurements in there. And then it's a fantastic look at your adrenals, because it looks at what your cortisol is doing. So one of the examples that I had given earlier before we went live and we were talking is, so if I have a client that says, I am not falling asleep, or I'm falling asleep, but I can't stay asleep. Well, if their Dutch test matches what they're saying, then what you're going to see is something like their cortisol is going to be up in the evening. If I have somebody that says, I have no energy in the morning, like when I wake up, I just wake up so tired, and I can't feel like I can start my day, in a good upbeat kind of way. Well, if your Dutch matches that, then what it's going to show is too low cortisol in the morning. It's going to be below the normal curve. And there are methods and things that we do that I incorporate in. Like once we have your Dutch test and we really analyze it and we look at it and I tell you what everything means, then we talk about those specific recommendations that are going to work, for you. So for someone like that, actually my Dutch test was, I had a Dutch test where in the mornings, it wasn't below the curve, but it was just kind of low. And it was also at the time where I had just like 2 months earlier, I had stopped nursing. But my littlest one was still waking up in the middle of the night, which she still does. Only once now. We're down to one time a night. But what it showed was my adrenals. I had a hard time rising and waking in the morning. And it's your cortisol that triggers you to wake up and triggers you to have energy, because cortisol is what gives us our energy. So,
That's so interesting, because like for me, every time I hear cortisol, I'm like, that's the stress hormone, that's bad. So
okay, and I was just going to go there. So here's the thing about cortisol, because it gets such a bad rap. It's like anything else. It is an extremely important hormone for us. So obviously too much is not a good thing, because yes, if you're producing too much cortisol, then that means that your adrenals are in overdrive, and you are in the constant chronic fight or flight, which is what you don't. That's what you don't want. And then if you're producing too little, that's also a big problem as well, because you're lacking the energy to do anything. And on either extreme, you're going to present with things like depression, anxiety, it's just brain fog, and all of those things come into play when your hormones are out of whack and are out of balance. So that's what I love about the Dutch test, because it pulls everything apart for you really nicely.
Oh, that's so great. And so how do you propose then that cortisol, how can somebody get their cortisol levels to kind of level out? How do you work with people in leveling those things out?
Yeah, definitely. So I come from a perspective of, number one, what do you have going on in your life? Because stress is one of the number one things that people are just chronically stressed these days. And so, we talk about what's stressing you, what are your triggers, and how can you better deal with them. We also look at obviously lifestyle. We look at food. We also look at things like, because a lot of times, here's the other thing too, typically when one of your hormones is going to be off, you're typically going to see another hormone or two that's going to be off, because they all kind of sync. Think of the body as, I like to think of the body as having this vibration, and that vibration has its own pace. Like everybody's vibration is different for what their body is producing at that moment in time. And if your vibration is off in one place, it's likely going to be off in another. So your hormones kind of are going to be the same. It's so a lot of times, like, what we'll see is maybe, someone who, and what I also love about the Dutch test is it can point somebody if they do have something going on with thyroid, or it can point someone to if I notice, like, glutathione, which is another organic acid that it checks into, is elevated. That's an indication that there's some kind of inflammatory process going on. But the coolest thing about this is when you're working on lifestyle, when you take in stress, when you take in food, when you take in, okay, what are you surrounded by? Chemicals, chemical wise, what's your sleep environment like? A lot of people don't realize that sleeping with your computers, with your phones, next to your beds are very, very detrimental, because now everyone's also realizing there's EMFs. So the electrical magnetic fields that we're also battling on a day-to-day basis now as well. So it's just, there's a lot to break down. It can be very, very overwhelming, but what I like to do and how I do it is I just approach this with, what do you want to work on first? What are you struggling with the most at this moment in time? Let's start there, and then we'll kind of build our tree out from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. And it's dealing with the emotional stuff too. And I know that's where you pull in the inner child stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And looking at the mind body connection there. They're so
Hold
sweet.
on 1 minute, everybody. Chad.
Hello.
Chad, can you come grab them, please?
Great stuff. So we are about to come up on the end of our time here. So is there anything that you would like to share with our viewers before we go?
Yeah, so one of the things, and this is something that I love to just really share with my clients, is the first thing is listen to your gut. Listen to your intuition. Listen to what it's telling you, because you'll know when your body is really telling you that something's up or something's not right. Or, it's like when you walk into one of those situations or scenarios where you get goosebumps, or you feel like somebody's watching you or following you. That is that's your gut. That is your body actually telling you that, hey, pay attention. I've sensed something. So the first thing is definitely listen to your gut. The second thing I would definitely say is start eating seasonally. start eating as seasonally as you can. If you can grow your own food, I would definitely say take the plunge. My husband thought I was nuts when I told him, hey, we're going to start our own garden. I need you to go out there and build me my garden beds. He was like, wait, what? So definitely, but that for me was a huge game changer. It's a huge game changer for your health. And it's also a huge game changer just for that grounding factor that we talked about, to really find something that you love to do, find something that really grounds you. And I think probably for the third thing is find something that you love to do that will help you to calm your stress. Like for me, it's going to the garden, it's going into my garden, or it's getting my workout in. But finding something, for a lot of people, and even for me, sometimes it's just meditating, just sitting in the quiet and really going inward and going to my place of meditation and just really connecting up that way, because that in itself is also very, very powerful. So I would say that those three things probably are some of my top suggestions for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. And I know that you have a gift for our viewers as well, right?
Yes, I do. So you can go to mindbodygutmom.com, and the free gift that I have is, it's basically a way for you to look at what's going on and figure out where is a good place to start. So it's a guide basically, and it really kind of guides you through the emotional factor of and it asks you some questions in the beginning of what might be going on emotionally, what might be stressing you out, those kinds of things. So it's a little bit it's not this whole worksheet that you have to do, but it is just a little bit of getting in touch with yourself as well, because sometimes I think we need those prompts to help us out. And then it goes further and it kind of breaks down some other information from the physical to the mental aspect. So yeah, so you can get your free gift there.
Mm-hmm. That is fabulous. And the link for that will also be below this video. So
yeah.
So I really appreciate you taking your time to share your magic with us and for getting us in touch with our inner child and telling us all about the importance of grounding and how powerful that is.
Yes, very. Well, thank you for having me. This is so great.
Thank you. And thank all of you for joining us as well. And remember to come back for all of the other workshops in the series. Enjoy. Mwah, mwah.